Hello anybody, and thanks for tuning in to Monday Morning Handicapping. This is a preview of the Preakness Stakes coming up, where we're going to take a look at the previous 11 runnings of the race, get a sense of the pace, and hopefully come up with some kind of track profile that we can take moving forward, as the Preakness is going to be run in 1 week. I haven't seen the entire field out yet. I know some runners are in, some are on the fence, but when the time comes and we know the field and we get our racing forms, hopefully there's some bits of information in this video that can help you when you're handicapping the Preakness Stakes. So let's dive right on in. A little agenda first. We're going to go over the brief introduction to the Preakness Stakes, the kind of what, where, when, and why, an overview of the numbers for the past 11 runnings, gain a general sense of how the races are run and won through several variables, a closer look at each variable with some takeaways, provide some potentially key elements when handicapping this year's running, and some closing thoughts and a wrap up. So the Preakness Stakes, it's a $2 million Preakness Stakes, is a grade 1 race going 9.5 furlongs. So furlong is an eighth of a mile. So this is a 1 mile and 3/16 of a mile race on the main dirt track at Pimlico Racecourse, located in Baltimore, Maryland. The Preakness Stakes is the second leg of the Triple Crown, and it is held 2 weeks after the first leg of the Triple Crown, which is the Kentucky Derby. The Triple Crown series is restricted to 3-year-old horses, so every horse only gets one chance to win the Triple Crown, thus amplifying its prestige. The Preakness Stakes was first run in 1873, 2 years before the first Kentucky Derby. The name comes from the winner of the Dinner Party Stakes race on the day that Pimlico Racecourse opened in 1870. This race has been run at 7 different distances throughout its history, and Secretariat currently holds the record for the fastest 9.5 furlong Preakness Stakes with a time of 1 minute 53 seconds in 1973. So my Google Sheets document breaking down how the previous 11 races were ran, we're going to take a look at that in a minute. This file will be linked in the description below if you want to go take a look at it for yourself. This video only covered the last 11 runnings for recency's relevance, and because my similar Kentucky Derby breakdown video goes back 11 derbies, well now 12 since we just ran one, because that is when I really got back into horse racing, so I just wanted to cover the races since I really got back into things, but I also think it being more recent is more relevant. If you're interested in that Kentucky Derby breakdown, you can check in my playlist, and it's called The Kentucky Derby, video number 000. The thumbnail looks like this down below. So now let's go ahead and take a look at that Google Sheets, which again will be linked in the description below. So here's what the Google Sheets look like. In the first column, we have the years in descending order of all the Preaknesses that I've followed going back to 2014. We also have the track, which is the conditions of the track. So in 2024, it was on a muddy track. The year before, fast, just meaning dry, no water, no rain. Fast, fast. This pink line indicates a COVID year, so it was actually run in October, I believe. But these are the track conditions. Then we have quarter mile, so the time that the leader of that race in that year ran to the first quarter mile of the race. LB indicates lengths back, so how far back at the quarter mile pole was the eventual winner of the race. So a 0 would indicate the horse on the lead went on to win. Down in 2022, the eventual winner was 2.5 lengths back, and so on. The split is the time between the quarter mile time and the half mile time. So how fast was this quarter mile run? 23.35 seconds. And the rate indicates how much faster or slower the split was from the previous quarter mile. So a negative 0.63. So that means the quarter mile from this first quarter mile to the second quarter mile was actually faster by 0.3 seconds. The year before, the second quarter mile was run 1.02 seconds slower than the initial or opening quarter mile. The year before that, the second quarter mile was run 1.2 seconds faster than this first quarter mile, and so on and so forth, just so you can get a gauge of how much horses are speeding up or more likely slowing down throughout a race. So we do that for the half mile to the 3/4 mile. Again, how far back the eventual winner was at the half mile pole. The quarter mile from the half mile to the 3/4 mile, and then how much they sped up or slowed down there. Same thing for the 3/4 to the 1 mile with your lengths back, the split, and the rate. Same thing to the 1 mile to the 3/16 of a mile. And this is not quite a quarter of a mile, so I had to do a little bit of math here. So here's your split for the final 3/16. But in order to get the rate, what I basically did was added 1/3 of the split from the 1 mile to the 1 mile and 3/16, added 33% because it's 33% longer to get it to a full quarter mile. And then I added the average slow rate at the time to that because the horses typically do slow down. So I thought it would be fair to add the average slow rate, and subtracted that from the previous quarter mile time just to get a ballpark sense of how much slower they would have gone had they ran an entire quarter mile or 4/16 rather than 3/16. So this rate here might be a little bit off depending on how much the horses were actually tired, but I did a little bit of math and I think it's in the realm of possibility that it was about this much slower or faster than the previous quarter. But for this last rate, just know I had to do a little bit of math on my own. Over here at slow rate, this is on average for each quarter mile throughout the entire race. On average, how much were they speeding up or slowing down? So last year, on average, they were slowing down by 0.43 seconds per quarter mile. The year before, 0.03 seconds, so ran pretty evenly throughout. Wire to wire winner, so how many horses went to the lead early and went on to win the race? I believe there are 4 of them total out of the last 11. These are the odds of the eventual winner, the name of the eventual winner, the post position they came out of, and the average up above. I have the averages for all of these stats up above, so just look above for the cumulative stats. I also have the race prior, so the horse that won their last race, what race did they run in? Did they win that race before the Preakness Stakes? Did they win that race in wire-to-wire fashion? The last race distance, so how many furlongs? So an 8 furlong race, that's 1 mile. A 9 furlong race, that's a mile and an eighth. 10 furlong, that's a mile and a quarter. And DSLR is days since last race, so how many days was their most recent race before winning the Preakness Stakes? And again, up above I have the averages for each section. I also have the pedigree of each winner, the sire or the father of each horse, and the dam sire, the father of the mother of the horse. So there's some information for you. Again, this file will be linked in the description below. And down below, I averaged out the times and all this information for a fast track, a wet track, and the wire-to-wire winners. So breaking down a little bit of all that information, let's start with the year and track. In 2020, the Preakness Stakes was run in October instead of May due to COVID. 4 of the last 11 runnings have been on a wet dirt track, so 36%. Keep this in mind because 36% of the last 11 Preaknesses, they got some water, so maybe expect a little bit of water, but just keep that in the back of your head. Keep an eye on the weather forecast in Baltimore, Maryland, leading up to May 17th. Take note of each horse's career performances and Tomlinson rating on a wet track. See video part 3 in my How to Read a Racing Form playlist for more information. I'll show you right now quickly where you can see that. So if you look in the top right section of each horse, you'll see a wet in the career performances. So Cole Battle has run on a wet dirt track 2 times. He won both of those races, and your Tomlinson figure are these numbers in parentheses, and basically anything over 320 is considered good. These are numbers that are computed based on the pedigree of the horse, which you can find up here, suggesting how much they may or may not like a certain distance or a certain track condition. So wet 362 may like it. A synthetic track under 300 may not like it, but not super low. Turf 367, this horse might like the turf all right. And for this particular race at this distance, maybe not his favored distance, it's under 200, so that's pretty low. But this is where you can find that information. And again, go back to that How to Read a Racing Form playlist and you can find more information on this. I believe it's the career performances video. 3 of the 4 winners on wet tracks won the Preakness Stakes wire to wire. So there were 4 wet tracks and 3 of those horses won wire to wire, which is 75%. However, 2 of those 3 wire to wire winners on a wet track were horses named American Pharaoh and Justify, who did go on to become Triple Crown champions. So they were just the best horses in the race, but they were still able to pull off wire to wire winners, got the lead early and held on. Maybe they didn't need the lead, but they went to it and it worked out for them. The only closer to win on a wet track in the last 11 runnings was the beneficiary of the fastest opening quarter mile time of 22.38 seconds. Of the last 11 runnings, when Exaggerator was 11.5 lengths behind the leader after that first quarter mile. That race had a slowdown rate of 1.11 seconds. So on each quarter mile, on average, the leader was slowing down by about 1.11 seconds, much higher than the average. Average fractions and finish times. The average cumulative fractions for all previous 11 runnings are as follows. This is wet and fast tracks. The average time for the Preakness Stakes in the last 11 years has been 23.54 to the quarter, 47.11 to the half mile, a minute 11.51 to the 3/4, 1 minute 36.35 to the mile, and a finishing time on average of 1 minute 55.63 seconds, an average slowdown rate per quarter mile of 0.54 seconds. On a fast track, the cumulative average is 23.82, so a little bit slower early on average, 47.25, 1 minute 11.40, so starting to pick it up over the average, 135.70 to the mile, and a finishing time on a fast track at 1 minute 54 seconds, 0.53, a little bit quicker than the average, and a lower slowdown rate, 0.32 seconds per quarter mile. So they're running a more even speed throughout the entire race on a fast track. The average times on a wet track, 23.09, again quicker than the average and a fast track, 46.89, quicker than the average and a fast track, 111.69, so starting to slow down a bit. 1 minute 37.39 to the mile, slowing down quite a bit, and an average finishing time of 1 minute 57.38 seconds, a slowdown rate of 0.89 seconds per quarter mile. So they get out a little bit quicker on wet tracks, it seems, and slow down a little bit more. Again, those two of those horses were American Pharoah and Justify, so it was probably going to be hard to catch them anyways. The fractions are set by the leader at each call of the race, not the eventual winner, unless that horse does win wire to wire. So when you're reading your racing form, the times you see are set by the leader. The races run on wet tracks are on average run faster early, but yield a higher slowdown rate of 0.89 seconds per quarter mile than on dry tracks, which again was 0.32 seconds per quarter mile. So the fast track is carrying their speed a little bit more, and that's more likely to happen when they are running a little bit slower early on. Compare the previous times of the horses in this year's Preakness and see how they compare with the averages above, as well as in relation to the other horses in the field, of course. I'm going to show an example of a conventional racing form versus a formulator modification right now. So if you go to your racing form, if you go to the track and buy a paper racing form, it's going to be a conventional racing form where these fractions right here, these times, will be set by the leader of the race, whether or not they win it, but the horse that was in front. This isn't a conventional racing form, but if it was, the leader went to the half mile in 46.74 seconds here, 1 minute and 11.07 seconds to the 3/4, to the mile in 137.28, and this horse would have been about 9 lengths off, then 4 lengths off, then 1 length off, so closing into the leader running these fractions. However, if you get an online racing form, sometimes you'll get a formulator modification where you can look at what this individual horse's times were. To know what kind of racing form you're looking at, look over to the right and find another horse that's in the same race as indicated by these bold letters. So Cole Battle in his last race ran against Sandman, who's right below him, and the Arkansas Derby right here, and you'll notice that these fractions are different, 47.51 and 46.74. That's how you can tell you have a formulator edition, where these run lines are actually the times that this individual horse ran that race. So Cole Battle was running ahead of Sandman in this race, but their finishing times are different because Sandman ended up passing him. He was running slower early and passed them. So just be sure that you know what kind of racing form you're looking at. Again, the conventional racing form is going to show the leader of the race's times, and you can see how far off of the leader your horse was, but a lot of people are starting to get formulators and modifying it to show this horse's individual times, even if they ran in the same race as another horse on the page. So just take note of that and take a look. I'm not sure which I prefer at this point, but just wanted to point that out for everyone. So now taking a look at the lengths back, the previous 11 across the board, wet or fast. At the first quarter mile, the eventual winner was 2.56 lengths back of the leaders. Half mile into the race, 2.12 lengths, so they're getting a little closer. 3/4 miles into the race, 1.05. 1 mile into the race, 0.4 lengths back, and this is essentially at the top of the stretch, at the top of the straightaway. On a fast dirt track, in the first quarter mile, the eventual winner was 2.36 lengths back. Half mile in, 2.43. 3/4 into the race, 1.36, so starting to creep up. 1 mile into the race, 0.64 lengths back of the leaders. And on the wet track, same thing. Quarter mile into the race, 2.88 lengths back was the eventual winner. Half mile into the race, 1.63 lengths. 3/4 into the race, 0.56 lengths. 1 mile into the race, 0 lengths, so he was leading at this time. Recall that 3 of the 4 winners on wet tracks won wire to wire, while the other winner was 11.5 lengths back at the first quarter mile, which was the fastest opening quarter mile of the past 11 runnings, skewing the wet averages. So 3 of the 4 won wire to wire, so they should all be zeros, but this horse that was 11.5 lengths back, so this lone winner on the wet track that was 11.5 lengths back is skewing these averages up, so just keep that in mind. That deep closing winner on the wet track was able to make the lead 1 mile into the race, so at the top of the stretch with 3/16 of a mile to go. On average, the winner is within 3 lengths of the leader throughout the entire race. So if you look up here, everywhere, on average, the eventual winner is within 3 lengths of the leader throughout the entire race. 3 of the past 11 winners were more than 3 lengths behind the leader a half mile into the race. Now, 3 of 11 is only 27% versus 73% that were less than 3 lengths behind the leader at the half mile pole. Again, this isn't averages. This is just overall total. There were 3 winners that were more than 3 lengths back at the half mile pole. 0 of the past 11 winners were more than 3 lengths behind the leader at the top of the stretch with 3/16 of a mile to go. So again, this isn't an average. This is just across the board. There was no horse that was 3 lengths back at the top of the stretch that went on to win. Only on a fast track, on average, do the leaders extend their lead from the opening quarter mile to the half mile. You can see that the lengths back increases slightly from the quarter to the half mile. That's not the same on wet or even the averages. In all scenarios, the eventual winner is on average within about a half length of the leader at the top of the stretch. So 1 mile into the race on wet, on average 0 lengths back, 0.64 lengths back, and 0.4 lengths back. So about a half length at the top of the stretch. Wire-to-wire winners. The average cumulative fractions for the 4 previous wire-to-wire winners are as follows. This is wet and dry tracks. Their average times are 23.49, 47.48, 1 minute 12.07, 1 minute 37.11 to the mile, and then a finishing time on average of 1 minute 56.58, a slowdown rate of 0.62 seconds per quarter mile. The time for the only wire-to-wire winner on a fast track in the last 11 runnings is as follows. 23.95, a little slower than all 4 averaged out. 48.92, again slower. 113.49, a little bit slower. 137.07, a little bit faster now. And a finishing time of 155.12, a second and a half faster than the average, with a slow rate of 0.03 seconds. And again, the sample size is 1, so this wire-to-wire winner on a fast track ran a very even speed throughout the entire race. The wet track races had on average faster quarter and half mile race times, yielding a higher slow rate of 0.89 seconds, yet still had 3 of the 4 wet track winners win in wire-to-wire fashion. The lone wire-to-wire winner on a faster track ran a nearly perfectly efficient race, running the same speed and expending an equal amount of energy throughout the race. Again, that slow rate of 0.03 seconds. Perhaps hard to duplicate. So if you see a horse that is a front runner in this upcoming Preakness, it might be hard to duplicate running a perfectly efficient race like this wire-to-wire winner did. Winners previous race. 5 of the last 11 winners most recent race prior to the Preakness Stakes was in the Kentucky Derby. That's 45%. However, a horse that most recently ran in the Kentucky Derby hasn't won the Preakness in the past 5 years. You can see the past 5 years most recent race: Pat Day Mile, Santa Anita Derby, Wood Memorial, Bluegrass, and Kentucky Oaks. So no derbies in the past 5 years for their most recent race. 4 of the last 11 winners of the Preakness won their most recent start, 36%. So you can see won their last start here, the Kentucky Derby back here, and 2 Kentucky Derbies down here. 0 of the last 11 Preakness winners won their most recent race in wire-to-wire fashion. 4 of the last 11 Preakness winners did win in wire-to-wire fashion. So 4 of the last 11 Preaknesses were won in wire-to-wire fashion, but none of the horses that have won it in the last 11 years won their previous race before the Preakness in wire-to-wire fashion. Found that a little bit interesting. 6 of the last 11 Preakness winners were stretching out some amount of distance from their last race, 55%, including 5 of the last 5. So if you look over here, last race distance, 8 furlongs, 9 furlongs, 9 furlongs, 9 furlongs, 9 furlongs, and the Preakness is 9.5. So the last 5 winners are stretching out some amount of distance. 6 of the last 11 Preakness winners ran 14 days prior to the Preakness, which is on the same day as the Kentucky Derby, 55%, but the overall average day since last race is 26. 6 Preakness winners that ran on Kentucky Derby day. 5 of those were in the Kentucky Derby, and 1 was the Pat Day Mile, a race on the undercard of the Kentucky Derby. So a lot of them are 14 days out before the Preakness. Some of them are 42, but on average about 26. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of weight into how many days since the last race. If the horse is sharp, then it doesn't quite matter because they can win from 2 weeks rest or 5-6 weeks rest, but just something I thought I would calculate. Winner's pedigree. I did not discover any repeat winning sires or dam sires, unlike the Kentucky Derby, in the past 11 runnings of the Preakness, but if you visit pedigreequery.com, I'm sure you could find some commonalities in previous generations of these horses. Take a look at this year's field for the Preakness Stakes and see if you notice any familiar names in regards to the last 11 Preakness winners, their sire and dam sire over here, especially if you take the track conditions into account, wet versus fast. So you can see on wet tracks, Arrogate sired horse one, a Scat Daddy, a Curlin, a Pioneer, the Nile, and then on the fast track you got Quality Road, Gunrunner, Twirling Candy, Daredevil, Warfront, McLean's Music, Lucky Pulpit. So just see if any horses in this year's Preakness, given the track condition, have any of the same sires. Just maybe bump that horse up just slightly. Not a huge impact, but something to think about. So just some key takeaways. Track. If the track is wet, wire-to-wire winners have had much success. If you like a horse from off the pace, look to see if they have had prior success closing on a wet surface before. If they have no races on a wet track, see if they at least have a high Tomlinson rating for a wet track. We showed that earlier. Again, about 320 or higher is pretty good. Fractions and finish times. Since the slow rate is lower on fast dirt and wet tracks have produced 3 of 4 wire-to-wire winners, choosing a horse that is going to be further back might be a difficulty for that deeper closer to overcome, especially on a wet track. However, pace makes the race, so when the entries for the race come out, the pace projection will play a key factor. Are there a lot of horses that are going to want to gun for the lead and battle for the lead? That might favor some of the closers. Is there 1 or 2 horses that want the lead? That might favor some of the front runners or horses that'll be right behind those front runners. Lengths back. Most success occurs when the horse is within a length of the leader at the top of the stretch. Examine closely if your top selection looks to be a deeper closer, that he can get on terms with the leaders in time. Have they had success at this distance, or have they shown success at a shorter distance while giving you a reason to assume that they will succeed at this distance? Maybe they were up on terms with the leader in a shorter race and look like they had some late run, just ran out of time because the race was shorter. Just take a look at the horse in their previous races. Does it shape up to look like they will appreciate a little further distance while getting close to the leaders at the top of the stretch? Wire to wire. 3 of the 4 wire to wire winners were on wet tracks, and those races were on average faster early and slower late. The lone wire to wire winner on a fast dry track ran a very efficient race where the slow rate was very low, 0.03 seconds slower per quarter mile, which is probably a rarity, so examine the pace scenario in this year's Preakness. Most recent race, there hasn't been a Preakness winner to come out of the Kentucky Derby in 6 years. The last 5 winners of the Preakness did not win their last race wire to wire and were also going a further distance in the Preakness than their last race. Only one of the last 5 winners of the Preakness ran on Kentucky Derby Day, 14 days prior. Winner's pedigree. I did not find any particular patterns for the winners regarding any repeat sires or dam sires. However, take note of any similar lineage in this year's field with the previous 11 years and combine that bit of information along with the track conditions and projected pace of the race when you get your racing forms. So on a fast dirt track, if there is a couple of front runners signed on to the Preakness, I would want to look for a horse that fits the race, so at the right class level and distance shouldn't be an issue. That will be relatively close to the lead, but not necessarily in front early. If there are several horses that look like they'll want to be in front early, I will opt for a horse to sit mid-pack or just behind those speed horses early. Wet dirt, I will definitely take a deep look at what I perceive to be the fastest horse in the race, as a wet Preakness has been kind to wire runners. If there is a lot of speed horses in the race, I will take a close look at all the closers that have a decent race over a wet track, or again, at least a good closing kick with a decently high Tomlinson rating for a wet track. Recall that 2 of the wire-to-wire winners on a wet track went on to become Triple Crown champions, so don't dismiss closers just because it is wet. Compare and contrast each horse in the field. That's it for the Preakness Stakes preview. I hope you got a little bit of information to at least get the wheels turning for the upcoming Preakness when you get your racing forms. I hope there's some relevant information or at least some food for thought. Thanks for checking this video out. Feedback is appreciated. Positive, negative, suggestions or recommendations. Let me hear what you think or have to say. Like, subscribe, and or share with friends. I say this all the time, but the target audience for me is for folks that are relatively new to the sport, so I'm trying to explain things and break things down so that the beginners can kind of understand what's going on and what it takes to understand the sport. I assume most players that are familiar with the game don't need or even want my input, so really trying to target some new players or people that know a little bit less and just help them along, like other people have done for me. If you do know anyone that is interested in horse racing and just needs a little refreshing or a little crash course, I have a couple of playlists. One is how to read a racing form. I've taken friends to the track before and the racing form just seems daunting and they don't want to read it. They just kind of want to follow my bet. So I came out with the playlist where I break down each component of the racing form, what it's telling you, and I break it down into bite-sized pieces that are easily digestible. Again, all the information in the racing form is there to help the player make an informed decision. So I break it down. It's a 10-part playlist, and they're about 2 minutes each, and I just explain what each part is telling you and how it can help you make a decision on a horse in any given race. I also have a playlist betting on horse racing where I break down all the different bets that a track typically offers. I break down what the bets are, how much they cost, how to structure a ticket, how much the ticket will cost based on your ticket structure, and also a couple of things I like to look for before placing such bets. So if you know anyone that's interested in horse racing, wants to learn a little bit more, those are 2 good playlists to start them out with. Coming up next, I'm thinking a race forecast for the Preakness Stakes. Once I get the racing forms, I'll make my selection and come out with the video of who I like and why. Other than that, I'm thinking about starting a pedigree playlist and start looking at some young sires on the scene. There's a horse named Vekoma that's got some young runners on the track, and I kind of want to know what's to come of his runners, see where they've been excelling so far. And knowing that I'm going to see more of his runners making their first time starts, maybe there's some value to be had, because for horses that have never run a race, you're kind of unsure what to do with. But if I can key in on what his runners like to do best first time out, maybe that will help me along. And I know pedigree is hard to learn, but got to start somewhere. So I'm thinking about doing a pedigree playlist, unless otherwise requested. If anyone else has any thoughts or ideas on what I should cover or what they'd like me to cover, try to break it down for everyone, please just let me know in the comments. But thanks to anybody for watching. I appreciate all the feedback I've gotten previously. It's a labor of love, these videos, so I hope that it's helping somebody out there. But again, thanks for watching. Good luck in the Preakness, and I'll see you next time.